Okay, this next part is to teach you how to do calculations, or how you can make the spreadsheet do the calculations for you. And it's kind of beautiful because it saves you so much work. All right, this first one, we're going to ignore this data because we don't have data for this at all, and I don't want it to count these as zeros. So I'm actually going to get rid of this one. Let's see, I'm going to delete it just so that I don't have the temptation of including those data. And the same thing for these guys. Okay, so let's start here. It says, what's the radial distance for the 0 to 30 minutes? And what I'm asking is, how far did the molecule travel in the first 30 minutes? Well, how far it traveled is where did it start? Okay, it started at 8 and it went all the way to 25. But this is the diameter, so we are going to see whatever distance this is, we cut it in half because we only want the radius. So the radial distance will be half of the diameter, and the 0 to 30 is this, how much did it travel from here to here. So do you guys remember what do I type on Excel or on a spreadsheet when I want it to do calculations for me? You can either speak up or put it on the chat. Remember the little bell that I'm like, ding, 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 Excel or spreadsheet, I want you to do stuff for me. Come wash dishes. Well, what is the little bell? Does not ring a bell? Okay. So it's an equal sign. So the equal sign is telling Excel to do stuff for me. And I'm going to show you one way that's not the right way of doing this. I mean, it will do what you want, but you're actually generating more work for yourself. So let's say that I want Excel to do, what's the difference between 25 and 8? Then I would type 25 minus 8, and then it tells me it's 17. And then I'll go like, okay, the difference in diameter is 17, but I want it to be radius. So I'm going to divide that by 2. And you're supposed to go, Dr.T, it's the difference divided by 2. Didn't you take math when you were little? And we're like, oh yes, here. So that difference, so it's that difference that I want to divide by 2. Ta-da! And then I can move on to the next one, which would be equal. I want 32 minus 16. 32 minus 16, close parentheses, divided by 2. Ta-da! But you know what? I really don't want to have to do all this typing. That's why I'm using spreadsheet, not a calculator. I don't want to punch those numbers in. So what I do is something different. Let me think. Yeah, first I'm going to show you the best way of doing this. So instead of writing, and whenever you look at this 8.5, you're like, how did this 8.5 come about? You can look up here. This is called an address bar. And like, oh, 8.5 came from 25 minus 8 divided by 2, which were these guys. I don't want to write that. That's too much work. I'll have to do the same thing for all of them. So instead, okay, I'm going to double click here. And so instead of 25, I'm going to click here. And it says G7. Oh. Instead of 8, I'm going to click here. And then I'm going to hit enter. It's 8.5. And you're like, what's the difference, Dr.T? I'll tell you. The difference is that now, instead of going here and typing, actually, I'll show you the more work. Instead of typing that minus that, which I could do. Okay, 8, thank goodness, it's the same thing. I can actually go either up here or up here, doesn't matter. But instead of having typed here, I could have not done any of that work. And what I could do is to make the computer perform these calculations for all of these in one single move. You don't believe me? hold on tight. Here's how you do it. See that little blue square there? You point to it until your cursor changes into something else. You hold that, and then you scroll down. And then, ta-da! It magically did it. Awesome. And you're like, oh, how about here? Do I have to go equal? Okay, between 30 and 60, it will be, okay, parentheses, this number 60 minus that number 30 divided by 2. Yeah, and then the computer even knows like, oh, I know you want to do this. And then I could check that, and then it did it. And like, hey, it did that. Do I have to type this again? No, there's another way you could do this. Let me show you. I could actually tell the computer do the same thing all the way to the end, to the right or down, and I could even have done this only once. And check this out. I could have said, repeat this operation all the way to this and all the way down here. Okay, doesn't want. Okay, so then I could do from here to here. Ta-da! It's kind of beautiful not to do all that typing. So then you're like, all right, it calculated stuff for me. Awesome. And you look at this and you're like, wait, so let's look at the patterns here. Large, smaller, smaller, large, smaller, smaller. So it's decreasing. So for your paper, you want to say that the diffusion rate was largest at the first 30 minutes and then it slowed down. And then in the discussion, so in the results, you just say fastest diffusion rate was in the first 30 minutes. And then in the discussion, you say, why is that? And you're like, well, here, the molecules are all concentrated in that hole here. And then as they were spreading away from the center, then they are not as close to each other. So even though they still have the Brownian motion, they're less likely to hit each other. That's why the diffusion rate decreases. And I'm like, good job. Yeah, it's decreasing. Oh my goodness, decreased so much that's now negative. And you're supposed to say like, oh, that's weird. How can this difference be negative? And if you were being that critical, I'm happy about that. So let me tell you that the computer did what you said it should do, but you were its master, so you need to tell it exactly what it's supposed to do. So you're like, how did it get to this 15 minus 1525? And you can either look in the address bar or you can double click on it and it says, well, this is what I did. I took J7 minus I7 and it divided by 2. So it did this. And it's like, oh, computer, this is not what I wanted. Between 0 and 90, I wanted you to take this one minus this one and then divide by 2. And the computer is like, how would I know? All I know is that in this case, I took these two numbers. Move one column over, I take these two numbers. Move one column over, I take the two numbers. Move one column over, take it to the 2. So as I said, you need, the computer is just your slave. It doesn't question. Sometimes the question says, are you sure you want to divide by 0? But mostly it doesn't question what you're doing. You know, like my husband, I say, please go wash dishes, and he doesn't question that. No, kidding. All right, so here is ij minus, okay, I can click on that, divided by 2. That looks right, between 0 and 90, 90, and then 0, okay. Hit enter. Oh, that's better. So I don't want to fix all of them by hand, I just drag and drop. So right now I'm clicking that arrow and then dropping. And they did that for me. So that's how you make the computer do calculations for you. You need to enter equal and then either type the number or type the address of the cell. So then the computer is doing calculations with using pointers instead of passing the actual value.